Hey, Patriots! We have a special guest today. We're blessed to have with us Steve Stern from Stern American. I'm very excited. Hi, Steve. A
How
hearty
you doing?
welcome.
I'm so
Good.
glad to be here.
Well, a hearty welcome to Patriots Rising AM Saturday edition on Patriot Soapbox. We're so glad to have you.
Well, we're here early in the morning, so we got up early to be here, and it's a pleasure being here. We're going to talk about precinct strategy and election integrity, Tina Peters, and many other things. But before we start, do you have any questions?
Not at the moment. Well, the only question I had, and you may just want to, kind of listen to it and then um bring us back to it was that I saw that there are 400,000 precinct availabilities and only 200,000 are left.
That,
Wow.
that's correct. So let's talk about that. So, how I got started, I'm with the Broward Republican Executive Committee. I am today the vice chair of it. There's a little picture of my card. And I just went to lunch with a good friend of mine. I was wearing my flag shirt and my flag hat. And a person came up to me and said, "You must be a Republican because usually the Democrats don't wear that." I said, "Yes. And I'm also the vice chair. And would you like to get involved?" He said, "Well, maybe." So I gave him my card, and that's the way we do it. So, what is precinct strategy? How did it get started? What's going on? So, it gets started with Dan Schultz and Steve Bannon. They met about 14 years ago at an event, and they talked about getting people involved. And Dan Schultz made up a website called precinctstrategy.com, www.precinctstrategy.com. If you go to there, you can see where to buy his book. It's about $10 on Amazon. And if you buy his book, it tells you everything you want to know about how to getting involved in the Republican Party. And you are right. There's 400,000 slots, and there's 200,000 people involved 4 years ago, and there's 200,000 people involved today. So why is that? Well, we've been on TV, both Dan and myself, for 4 years on many, many programs, maybe 200 different programs, maybe more. We can't even keep track anymore. And we talk about precinct strategy and get people involved. And for some reason, um, they get involved, but then they drop out, or every 2 years you got to be reelected to the either executive committee, county committee. There's different ways. Each state has different ways to get involved. So in Florida, we have what we call our executive committee. In Massachusetts, called a town committee. In California, it's called central committee. And in some states, they have no committee, which is like Wisconsin. So around the country, if you want to get involved, you can go to many ways to look to see how to get involved. Now, one of the problems that we've had is that there's three different groups in the Republican Party. We have the establishment party, which you know about. We have the rhinos, and we got the MAGA. And the MAGA is pushing out the rhinos and the establishment. So what happens is when a MAGA person becomes a chairman, a lot of the people drop out because they're establishing people and they don't like the MAGA. So that's one of the reasons why it's going on. And then we can tell you what you do when you become a committee man or a committee woman, which is when you join up, that's what you become. So you attend meetings and you get to vote. And the main objective of your committee is to get candidates elected. So you sign up voters, you canvass neighborhoods, you poll watch, you poll work, make phone calls, and you do election security. So you have all these things that are connected, both the election security and the precinct strategy. And that's how we got involved in all this stuff. So in the background, you see two pictures of myself and President Trump. If you can see it, if you're on the radio, we have two pictures of myself with President Trump. And there are two key things. One of them is when I visited with him at the arena here at Broward County, where there was 20,000 people involved. And one was up at Mar-a-Lago for the people that could see it. That's over this shoulder. And I was up in Mar-a-Lago, and up in Mar-a-Lago, if you go into the ballroom and you go to the left, there's a staircase, and you go up, and that's President Trump's office. And you will say, well, how did I get involved in all this, and how did it expand? So about 4 years ago, I saw Dan Schultz on Steve Bannon's program, and I called him up and I said, "This is Steve Stern. At that time, I was the membership director of Broward County." And I said, "We have some great things going on." And we talked for about 20 minutes. And he said, you know what? Steve Bannon is trying to get people who have success stories. So let me see if I can get you on. So about 2 weeks later, I got a call from Cameron, which is his producer, and he said, Dan said that you had a lot of success stories. Tell me what they were. I told him what they were. He said, okay, we're going to get you on tomorrow. I said, okay. How do I get on? He said, well, you have to have Skype. So I had to go get Skype. And the next day, he said, you be on about 10:15. We're going to Skype you about then. So I get up at about 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm making notes to myself because, I wanted to know what I was going to say because they told me to have about 10 minutes. And I made all these notes and I never fell back to sleep. So they Skyped me at 10:15 and I figured, well, that's great. I'll get right on. I know what I'm going to say. Well, when I got on, Cameron and one of his producers told me, hey, we're running a little late today because we had some extra people. So we're going to move you to about 10:45, but stay on. You could listen to what's going on in the background because you're already on there and we don't want to lose you. So 10:45 comes on and he says, we're still running a little late. We're going to get you on 11. And this goes on till 11:45. So I figured, well, maybe they're not even going to get me on. And by that time, I lost 5 pounds of sweat because, when you get on your first show with 1 million people, could have been 2 million. I had no idea because nobody told me. I said, that's concerning because you want to make sure what you're going to say, it resonates with everybody. So they finally get me on at 11:46. And at that time, I forgot everything I was going to say. So I just started talking. And I told them everything that was going on. And we went on for about 12 minutes. And they said, Steve Bannon says, thank you very much, brother. It was very good. We appreciate everything you're doing. And that was the end of it. And about 2 days later, I got a copy of the script of what I said. I looked at it and I sent it out to a couple of people. Said, "Hey, that's a great job you did." And I think they did it on Rumble back then, and or however they did it, but it was able to send it out. And they said, when they texted me, they said, "Hey, you did a great job. We had a lot of people want to know what's going on, and we want to have you back on again in about 2 weeks." Well, I've been on there probably 100 times, and we spread the word, and a lot of stuff happened with our precinct strategy. So now let's take a look at the other picture with President Trump and myself, and that the picture where I was up in Mar-a-Lago. Um, how I got up there is Liz Harrington, myself, Dan Schultz, and Steve Bannon got together for a conference, and we asked President Trump endorse precinct strategy, which happened about a month after our conference. So President Trump had endorsed it, and on the one picture on the other side at the auditorium, as you see the picture, he gave me about 2 minutes while we're taking a picture. There was 25 people involved in this, and how we got involved. It was an 8-hour program for about 26 people where we got to meet important people every 45 minutes. We were moving, and then we had lunch, and then at 4 o'clock or thereabouts, we were sat in a special place in the auditorium, and then we're brought down to a room where the Secret Service were there with President Trump, and they took away all our phones and everything, so we couldn't take pictures, pens, everything got out, and we were in this room. It was very hot, and we'd get to take a picture. So when I got up to take a picture, I shook President Trump's hand, said, "Do you know what precinct strategy was?" He said, "No, I didn't, but we're going to go into a room. Why don't you we're going to give each person 3, 4 minutes to discuss all these things." So I told him what precinct strategy was. I was about the third person to speak of the 25. And he said, "You know what, Steve? If I knew what precinct strategy was, I would have won the 2020 election." And he said, give your card to my assistants, and they will give you my secretary's number, and you call up and make an appointment. So that's how I got to see President Trump up there. And a funny story happened when I got to see him. 2 weeks prior to that, um, they canceled the appointment. And so I figured I wasn't going to see him. But 2 weeks later, which happened to be when I saw him at 4:30, at 6 o'clock on that day, we were actually having an event for President Trump. I was involved with Michelle Terrace, who has Jexit, and United West, Tom Trento, where we presented President Trump an award for everything he did for Israel. So it's funny how both of these things ended up on the same day. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened with President Trump because it kind of changed my life. and also made a lot of stories out of this. So we had about 45 minutes. I had my wife there. I had my grandson there, and there was six secretaries, and Liz Harrington flew in. This was 2 days before the last election. So I started talking to him, and I said, Mr. President, um, I came up here. Basically, he asked me why I was up there to see him, and I explained to him about the precinct strategy. He says, yes, I know. I saw you before, and I would like you to talk about it when you do your when you go to start to run for the election again, to do at your rallies to ask people to get involved because we weren't getting enough people involved then. And even though he asked people to get involved, it wasn't enough. But he did something very important. He asked people to go to Protect the Vote and Trump 47. And that led to a lot of stuff which I was involved in, will tell you. And he, as we were in this conversation, he was calling his pollster, asking him different information. So his mind was not on everything we were saying. So it took a lot of effort to discuss everything. But I said, you know what, Mr. President, I have two candidates would like you to endorse, which I never thought he would do, but he did. He endorsed two of my candidates. One was in Vermont, one was in New Hampshire. Now I'm just a guy, and it's just like you're a woman that is just trying to help the country. I have I was not connected with anybody other than a few people. And he saw fit to do this, which I thought was phenomenal. So we talked about a few other things, and then he said something that actually changed my life. He said, what do you think about the 2024 election? I said, well, Mr. President, nothing has really changed when it comes to election security. He says, boy, you're 100% right because I see this. But he said, you know what? Liz told me you do a precinct strategy Zoom. Why don't you start to do a Zoom for election integrity? I said, uh, Mr. President, I really don't know enough about election integrity, but you know that I bring experts together on precinct strategy, and I will look into this. So about 6 weeks later, I started moving the election integrity with the precinct strategy because I had to spend weeks calling all the people to find out who the experts were on election integrity. Now that takes a lot of effort, which really paid off. So about 5 weeks after we did our first election integrity call, we had five different speakers. We had five different speakers for precinct strategy. And we had between, I think it was about 300 people on it, which I thought was very good. And we were doing that and getting more people together till about 10 months ago. 10 minutes ago, I was on Steve Bannon in the morning, and I do something that's very good. And I want your people to, as you listen, we're going to tell you a lot, but I want you to get your camera out if you're watching this. If you're listening, get your pen and pencil out. So what I did was I'm an old school guy. I'm going to be 84 here, and I use poster cards, and we're going to see a lot of them while we're talking. So you could see, you go to stern1054gmail.com. I put that on the bottom of the screen. And they also saw my flag shirt company. We're the largest patriotic website in the world. We're going to talk a little bit of that a little later because all this gets involved together. So on that day when I put my number up, my name up, we got 1,000 people to sign up. I said, wow. It took me 4 hours to send them a link to Zoom to get on because that was the only way to get on. So while we were on the program, Steve usually gives me 5, 6 minutes. But at this point, he gave me 12 minutes. And I had to come up with new things because when you prepare for 5, 6 minutes. So as we're talking, Steve says, you know how Bannon is. I don't know if you watch him. He says, hold it, brother. He says, I'm going to do something for you because I have something in mind for you because I know how hard you work and you've done the precinct strategy. And I know you're an older guy and you work around the clock. We're going to put this live on Getter and on the War Room. So I said, Mr. Bannon, that's fantastic. I told him that, you're going to make me. He says, no, you already made. I'm going to help you get this thing out because I think what you're doing is phenomenal. So the next day, I got a text from Maureen Bannon, his daughter, saying we had 48,000 people on the Zoom meeting. And I said, wow. So as an 83-year-old guy then, and an 84-year-old guy in this month, I said, you got to learn something every day because God gives you X amount of time in this earth and you never know when you're going to go. So what I did was I started calling my friends up and asking them who are the podcasters that we got to help. So just 2 weeks ago, we had our Zoom meeting. We had 8 million people on. So you ask, how do you get 8 million people on a Zoom meeting? Well, we had the War Room. They had 100,000. We had SternAmerican. We got, I think, 26,000. Sometimes we get 70,000. We had Cloud Hub. We had Lindell TV. We had our Stern American. We had 184 podcasters. We had X. We had Rumble. We had Getter. We had Patriot TV. We had Lindell TV. We had OBBM Network and many, many other people helping us because they realized how important this is. So we had 8 million people on it that we could know about. And we only report we know about, but we know we had more than 8 million people because our friend yournews.com, he puts it on, and we'll talk about that later too. He put that on. He doesn't know how many people it gets because he doesn't have a way to track them. So we have a lot of people that help us. They don't know how many people get on. So we only report what we know from the people that present this to us. So during our last meeting, we had a very important thing. We had this particular Zoom and this particular election security thing was for Tina Peters. Now, everybody, we hope on listening knows what Tina Peters is and who. And just to let you know, and your people know, she was put in jail for 9 years, convicted of 3 counts of attempting to influence a public official, conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation, official misconduct, blah, blah, blah. Because what she did was she realized there was fraud in Colorado. And when she did that, she preserved the election records and they told her to destroy it. She wouldn't do that. So she made a copy of it and she put it out and she showed how that was. So they indicted her. So we know how crooked that was. So I'm going to report what we did. The first thing is we want to let everybody know, and we did this during our Zoom meeting. We asked as many people could do, call the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis. Jared Polis at 303-866-2471. We asked everybody to call and ask for a pardon for Tina Peters. Now, while we were on, people were calling and we kept seeing people saying, hey, we left a message, we did this, we did that. And we have 9 computers in our other room, and we were watching people, what they were saying on the different programs, saying how this was such an injustice. Now, we'll come back to the Zoom meeting, but something happened this week, which was amazing, and I'm going to read it to you. And President Trump on Truth Social came out with this. I'd like to read it to you. Radical left Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser ignores illegals committing violent crimes like rape and murder in his state and instead jailed Tina Peters, a 69-year-old gold star mother who worked to expose and document Democratic election fraud. Tina is an innocent political prisoner being horribly and unjustly punished in the form of cruel and unjust punishment. This is communist persecution by the radical left Democrats to cover up their election crimes and misdeeds of 2020. The same Democratic Party that files El Salvador to try to free MS-13 terrorists is cruelly imprisoning, or perhaps for life, a grandmother whose brave and heroic son gave his life for America. Colorado must end the unjust incarceration of innocent Americans. I am hereby directing Department of Justice to take all necessary action to help secure the release of this hostage being held in Colorado prison by the Democrats for political reasons. Free Tina Peters now. So you could see that President Trump was involved in this and started with Mike Lindell, who was on our Zoom. We'll tell you what he said. But about 8 weeks ago, he went up to see President Trump. And as he was talking, he turned to President Trump and he said, Tina Peters. President Trump turned to his attorneys and said to them, get her the out of jail. And he has worked hard. And a lot of people say, well, why doesn't he pardon her? Well, because they made it a state crime. They were smart enough to do a federal election and make it a state crime, which was illegal. And he is working very hard to do this. Now, a lot of people say, Steve, why did you spend all this time and what are you doing? Well, I'm going to read you a letter and I'm going to show you a little thing here with the people that can see this. On my 81st birthday, I came home May the 20th. And for the people that can see this, There's a little rip in this envelope. This envelope is from Mar-a-Lago. My wife didn't know that, and she came home and she ripped the envelope. Well, for the grace of God, you could see this letter, and we could see it's from President Trump, and I'm going to read it to you because it's an amazing thing that I got for my birthday. And we think it came because Liz Harrington showed President Trump some of the clips that I did, and it says, "Dear Steve, we join your family and friends in wishing you a happy 81st birthday. Our nation is strong because of hardworking patriots like you who believe in and defend the great American ideals of faith, family, community, and our country first. Your commitment to excellence and dedication to exemplify the American dream through ingenuity, hard work, and principled leadership is the foundation of your tremendous success and demonstrates the proud spirit of family owned and operated business. As you celebrate this special day, we hope your heart is filled with joy, knowing you have experienced our country's greatest blessings, freedom, and the affection of your loved ones. Melania and I send our very best wishes for your continued happiness, health, and success. Happy birthday, and may God bless you and your family. Sincerely, Donald Trump." Now, when you get a letter like this, and whoever expected something like that, because I would never think of that. So I immediately told my wife when I get to my office the next day, I was going to send President Trump a thank you, which I did. And I sent him some flag shirts and I wished him a happy birthday and sent him a card for June 14th, which is Flag Day. And every year, our company, because we're the largest patriotic website in the world, does a Flag Day event. So we invited him to the Flag Day event. He did not come because he was out of town, but we're going to try to get him this year. And we're going to tell you a little bit about that. So during our election security call of the 2 weeks before, I'm going to tell you who was on and what we did. So we had Mark Cook on. Mark Cook is in Colorado. He had a town hall, and we had 20 people talking for 15 minutes about Tina Peters. And if you would like to send her a letter now, I got her okay last week. And we started our election security call with 9 minutes from Tina Peters talking from jail. And we will send you that if you want to get it out for your people. I'll have my secretary send it. It's so interesting, but you got to bring your tissues with you because when you see and hear a 70-year-old mom, grandma, that's washing trays 8 hours a day, it's an injustice to this country. And you will say, why, Steve Stern, are you investing 6 hours a day for 20 days to do this? Because somebody has to do it. So I'm asking everybody to do this and send a letter to Tina Peters. I sent her a Mother's Day card and letters I send every few days. We got people all over the country doing it. And you send it to Tina Peters, number 203512. That's 203512. 1401, that's 1401 West or W. 17th Street, Pueblo, Colorado, 81003. Now, she is in a prison that's the most disgusting place you've ever want to see. And it's next to a mental institution. So they're bringing people back and forth to the prison and into the mental institution, which is right next door. So we're trying to get her out of that prison. And we're also trying, just this week, we had, I'm the vice president of the Western Republican Club, and we had Peter Tickton. So if you want to know who Peter Tickton is, he went to school with President Trump at 16 years old. He knows him forever. He was one of Trump's attorneys. He speaks to him all the time. He talked for an hour. And I didn't even notice till a week ago, he put a habeas corpus in to get Tina Peters out of jail while she's appealing her case. And it was rejected because he had two things and he's got to refile it. So we'll do it. He talked about all the fraud in the elections and what happened. And I learned a lot, even though I know a lot about it. So we're going to try to have him come on and do this. So Tina spoke for 9 minutes, which really got the crowd great. And they started sending information to the governor. And then we had Catherine Engelbrecht on. Catherine Engelbrecht, True to Vote. She's on a lot of time. She had talked about Tina because she was in jail also for a couple of weeks. And she has a new app called 1v3, and it talks about the voter rolls and how to ensure fair and free elections. Excuse me. Then we had Kimberly Fletcher on. Moms for America. They're going to get their 500,000 women to help us to call the governor, to send her messages. Because, when you're in jail and you get messages, it keeps you going until something happens. Because no matter what President Trump does, what we do, they're still going to delay and delay as much as they can to keep her in jail because the left leaning Colorado Democrats are the worst in history. Then we had Dr. Doug Frank on. Dr. Frank, he testified for Tina. He talks all over the country about the voter rolls and how the 2020 election was rigged. And, Peter Tickton talked about that too, even though we know it was rigged. We don't talk much about that now, but we still bring it up. And I got to give you the good news. We have a lady on all the time, Linda Sinkowitz, and I just did a show on her. She's on OBBM Network, who just put our stuff on. And if you go to OBBN Network, the front page, we had 40 to 50 people do videos for Tina. They're all posted on there. So you could hear me and all of my friends and all the people talk about what they did to Tina. And we had a gentleman on, Matt Meck, who did an 8-hour program with many people about 3 months ago, talking everything what happened to Tina Peters so you would know what went on. And we talk about um, all the people that help us, the podcasters, because I try to get one podcaster on every show that we can do in order to, help us get this thing ahead. So also we had Ed Fisher on who talked, we try to get different states on. Ed Fisher talked about West Virginia, and they just made it a law that you got to have voter ID to vote. And that's going to really help. And he's with citizens and election to support grassroots. Then we had Greg Langsworthy on. He's in Riverside, California, talking about how they found fraud in the election that just passed. Now, we also had Joe Hoft on. Joe always helps us. He's with Gateway Pundit. He gets many letters out, many information out so you can get it. So you see how important all the information that I'm giving you helps you. And what happened in the election and why it's so important and why we know it's even more important now. So what happened during the last election, I work with the RNC head people, Christina Norton, and other people in the administration, both the Trump administration and the RNC. However, the RNC and the Trump administration only used us about 10% of the time. And why they used us and what we did, I got them 40 to 50,000 poll watchers and poll workers through Protect the Vote. I did 134 programs, and many on Bannon and John Fredericks and Steve Gruber, which are Real America Voice, which is our people, asking them to get involved. So they gave me a gold star, which was terrific, but it didn't help because if you notice, President Trump won with a landslide, but many of our down ballots didn't get it because they concentrated on President Trump and they refused to work on the down ballots. Now they helped a little bit, but let's take California, Orange County. Orange County was 3 to 4 seats we lost. And how did we lose them? So on election day, we were way ahead. So they decided to bring in ballots the next week, and now they were no longer way ahead. Then they brought in ballots the next week, and they were tied. Then they brought in ballots the following week, and they got destroyed. So you see, and it's very unfair because election day should be the end, and there should be no ballots counted after election day. But California is a weird place. And about a year and a half ago, a girl, Tina Saline, saw me on Bannon and said, "Can you turn California red?" I said, "Well, California is red. They just don't know it." And we worked very hard for 6 months, getting 10,000 people to work. And it just so you talk about Colorado. Well, California is worse than Colorado. And we're trying very hard to correct this. Even though Trump got more votes than before, it's still a blue, blue, blue state. And it's blue because from Ronald Reagan's time to now, 20 million people left California and 20 million illegal aliens got in there. So that's what happened. So now we're going to have another election security call coming up Wednesday, May the 14th. I'd like to invite everybody there, tell you how to get on. You get on first by sending, again, an email to me, stern1054@gmail.com. But say you don't want to send an email and you want to come on. We have a lot of people come on. Go to Stern American, scroll down to Stern American Rumble, and we are live there at 2 o'clock Eastern Time on the 14th. And you will be able to get on and you can see all the back issues. If you go to Stern American Rumble, they're all posted there. There is so much information. And when we won the election, I was, I was flabbergasted, but I did get Susie Wiles texted me, General Flynn, Mike Lindell, many people texted, emailed me. Not that I was going to change the election, but I helped. And why did we help? Because from the time that Steve Bannon put it on, we got more and more people on to understand, to join Cleta Mitchell, Jovan Pulitzer, all the people on election integrity to understand what they had to do to help win the election and stop the fraud. Now, a lot of people say to Steve, hey, how did we win this election, not the 2020 election? Very simple. The last people that ran the election in 2020 did everything after the election. So when the fraud came out, which we saw in Georgia, which we saw in Detroit, which we saw in Philadelphia, weeks after they started the lawsuits. Well, everybody said you have no standing. So the judges kept saying that. So what did they do differently in this election? Well, they did all the lawsuits prior. If you notice, in Pennsylvania, they didn't bring ballots in after election day because they stopped that. In Wisconsin, they try to bring in 3 truckloads of ballots from California. The middle of the night after the election, they didn't allow it to happen. So they had 6,000 lawyers working on this, doing all these lawsuits prior to that. So that was the good news. But they didn't use the lawyers for the down ballots because on the down ballots, they found ways to cheat. And President Trump said it was too big to rig. That is the truth. It was too big to rig because he had so many votes that they couldn't cheat and they couldn't find ways to cheat that would turn the election. And the people were fed up. And the good news is Charlie Kirk helped turning younger people in to Republicans because, the schools were teaching all this malarkey. And one of the things that we learned, which we have tried to change, President Biden hired 100 people on TikTok to influence these young kids from 10 to 14 to 18 to become socialistic. But you could see how that changed because the voting, we got many more young people because they understood that the borders were open, that the drugs were coming in, that so many things were happening, that this country was falling apart, that they finally woke up. The biggest thing that we learned, and I just got a text, one of the reasons they turned a lot of people in Pennsylvania from Democrats to Republican is they sent out 350,000 texts saying, do you want to see men in women's locker room? Well, 23% of the people responded to that and against 3% normally. So they went to those people and it said, well, you must be a Republican. And they said, yeah, because we don't want to see that happen. And they changed to either Republican or independent. So the good news, just recently in New York, in Queens, 6,000 Democrats changed to Republican and 6,000 Democrats turned to independent. That's 12,000 that went away from all this stuff. So you could see this thing is changing. So that's terrific. Now, what I usually do, because one time, one of the people on Bannon called me because I put my phone number up and she said, Steve, go home, take some oxygen and start to breathe because when you get on TV, you don't breathe. So I have a little sign up on my computer saying, let the person who's interviewing you ask you a couple of questions, go slow and start to breathe so that you can carry on the rest of the conversation. So I'm going to give you a chance to ask a couple of questions, maybe do a commercial and give me a chance to start breathing so we can continue on our conversation.
That's funny. I was thinking he just needs to take a breath right about that time. So the timing was perfect. You have got so many irons in the fire, and it's just awesome. Um, I really don't have any questions at the moment because you pretty much covered all the bases, and I love your signs. I didn't even have to do the bio. You just do that all yourself. That's really
Well,
great.
the nice thing is I never talk too much anymore about our flag shirts, but we have some holidays coming up, and I want to tell you because people ask me about that all the time. And most of the time, I don't like to put it on because, it's your show, but everybody's allowing me to do that because about the tariffs, and the tariffs have hurt everybody. And I just got off the phone with a guy. He had no clue what it could do to businesses. So I want to explain what's happening so everybody understands because there's a lot of stuff happening in this country that people don't get to hear or know. So if you're not a business person, you wouldn't know about this. Uh, so I'm going to tell you about the tariffs and what it's doing. So if you noticed yesterday or the day before, there was something came out that um, Boeing is closing six plants because they got canceled by China on the planes. So now President Trump was really upset, but you have to understand what's happening. So we, along with many other people, now we deal with many, many countries, but we also deal with China. Now, I'm not affected as much as some people, but let's say you're in the furniture business and you buy 80% of your furniture from China. Now, what do? You're not going to be able to pay 150% on a table that you, let's say, sell for $100. You're going to have to sell it now for 250, which will not get sold. So you stop the stuff coming in from China. You hold off until hopefully the tariff goes on. If you're in the shoe industry, 80% of the shoes are made there. How can you change and do another country in time to get the shoes in for Christmas or for now or for whenever? So take all these different um, businesses that are going to have to put people out of take them off their payroll. Now, also in China, just to let you know, 16,000 people, 16 million people got put out of work. Many, many factories are closing because not only they stopped buying the stuff, but they're moving it. So China is getting affected, but the United States is getting affected. And if you don't think that 100,000 businesses could go out of business in the United States, you're wrong. So I want everybody to understand, even though we love what Trump is doing, I think it was a little mistake not to give them 3 or 4 months to get their stuff here before they did that so they can save Christmas because it's now been about a month till that's go on. And China is not negotiating, and it could be another month or two, which will never get the goods here. And people are going out of business. So the merchandise is being destroyed because let's say it's on the way and you can't afford to pay the duty on all this goods coming in, the goods get sold off. So I want everybody to understand that. It's terrific that we got tariffs, but we got to be very careful. So let's get back to our flag shirts. Some of the important things, we got some new items. We just got socks in, which about a month ago, which have become one of our best items. And, we do everything from shirts to shawls. This is a huge item. I'm going to, even though it's a ladies' item, I'm going to put it on here just to make it a little bit. But we sell
I
so
like them.
I mean, you can imagine how many of these we sell, and we have every kind of hat. And how did we start this? I mean, I've been in business for 71 years now. You say, well, how does somebody stay in business for 71 years? Well, I've seen everything. I started when I was 12 years old. My father in Miami. I came from Brooklyn, and we came down from Miami. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of history of myself. So when I was 12 years old, I was going to junior high school, and we get out, and I take the bus down to downtown Miami, where my dad's wholesale business was, and I went around to some of the people in the area, and we were open on Saturday, so I came in on Saturday too, and I visited with guys who came down from Cuba and opened up stores in downtown Miami because they had to get out of Cuba because they were getting persecuted, and they spoke Spanish, I spoke English, I taught them a little English, they taught me a little Spanish, but the one thing they always told me, be honest, no matter what happens. And through my career, your reputation is the most important thing. That's why I get on every show. That's why Steve Bannon puts me on. He knows that what I say is true. I never make up stories. I never tell anybody something that's not true. And I can back up everything. And, sometimes I may exaggerate a little bit, but in most cases, we get them right to the point. So prior to 9/11, I was doing business with J.C. Penney. I made a style called bandedbottom.com, which we don't really, it's not glorified, so I don't ever tell anybody about it, but I don't bring a shirt out. But what it is maybe your grandfather would wear it. It's got a little band on the bottom. We're the largest in the world in that. So it's nice that I could say that I developed an item that we're the largest in the world on. And J.C. Penney did it for 44 years. I sold them 14 million a year. And then they decided that they wanted to go young. I said, guys, I've been in this business a long time. You go young, you're out of business. Well, they pretty much almost went bankrupt or did go bankrupt and they were taken over. And they're no longer the powerhouse they used to be. So they dumped us because they went young and we went online and we became even bigger because we had all their customers because they no longer did that. And we started doing business with other companies and Sears, and of course they went out. So we put it on, and many customers, retired, and we took over their website. So we're still the largest in the world on it, and it's phenomenal that you can stay in business that long. But I did give most of the business to my son so that he could do it because I went to doing the political stuff, which I'm on now. And you say I do a lot. Well, I run fundraisers for our elections for our Broward County Republican Party. We ran a big golf event for 2 years, but what I do is I bring three things into one. We had a golf tournament, a speaking event, and we did our election integrity live from Trump International. We had 9 million people on it. And we had a lot of people fly in and did it live, and it was super phenomenal. It went on for 3 hours, and many people love it. So you could see all this stuff. You say we do a lot, but we want to thank all the people around the country. When I get on, a lot of people don't have a chance to get on, but are working very hard. And I want to mention a couple of them because it's very important. So we have a girl in Massachusetts. She goes under the name Chainsaw Sue O'Sullivan. And we started with her a number of years ago when she started town committees in Massachusetts. And she started 51 new town committees because they never had town committees in Massachusetts other than maybe five. And she just kept opening them up and she became the chair of chairs and has really done a wonderful job in Massachusetts, which is still a blue area. But hey, we're turning a lot of these New England areas more red and more people are turning. So we mentioned Tina Celine. I work with her. She calls me every week and we go over stuff. Then we have a guy in Texas. He started what we call the 5-star plan, which I'll put up, and you can get his book and you can go to his website. And he's like Dan Schultz. He does the precinct strategy and he does it in Texas and he got thousands of people involved. So it's super phenomenal. Then we have a guy in South Carolina. He runs every week. He puts out a newsletter every day. I'm sorry, a newsletter. His name is Jeff Davis and his wife is Olga, and they call it MYSC. So it's my SC, which stands for South Carolina, GOP.com. You can join that and find out what's going on in South Carolina. Then we have a girl, Elizabeth Nader, who's working with a guy. I want to mention if you're listening and you're in New Jersey, Spadia is running for governor. Remember, we have two governor races in 2025. I believe it's New Jersey and Virginia. So we need to be cognizant of that fact. We also can't go to sleep because if we lose the 2026 election, we're up the creek without a paddle. So I tell everybody, right after President Trump won, I gave you 2 days to rest. If you don't get involved and you don't start working on the same thing, we are going to lose the 2026 election. And if you don't think we can lose that, you're 100% wrong because the Democrats are working round the clock. They're using our strategy, house to house, door knocking, and everything else. And they're spending tons of money to turn a lot of this, and they're using the election fraud. Even though President Trump is working on this, so far I haven't seen anything passed that's going to help us. So even though he has executive orders, a lot of the blue states don't care about his executive orders. Then in Vermont, we got Stacey Malloy. We have a great guy in Connecticut. I love him. He's the youngest chair, Dominic Lombardi. He's 20 years old. I call him every month, see what's going on in Connecticut. And the reason I got all these states is a funny thing happened because Steve Bannon, after I was on there for about 6 months, he said, Steve, I know you know everybody. Can you get me success stories like yourself? And I had to call every state. I had to go through every people and I got them success stories. But a funny story. The the first person I got him on was from Mexico. When I got him on, he said he texted me while the guy was on. He said, "What in the heck did you get this guy in from Mexico?" And I said, "Well, look, we want to turn the blue states red." So he texted me back, says, "You're right." Then we got on Delaware, and again he said, "Why'd you get Delaware?" I said, "We got to turn Delaware red because it's where Biden is." So we got a lot of red states on, and I got him about 24 states until he stopped doing it. And a lot of people like Ann Partridge, who's going to be on our next Zoom meeting, and I want to tell everybody the next Zoom meeting is going to be Wednesday, 2 o'clock Eastern again. We're going to have Mark Cook is going to be doing another um, town hall, but instead of 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Mike Lindell will be on it. He's going to tell you what he spoke to President Trump about it. Terry Raposa from California will be on there, and our friend Ann Partridge from Illinois, who's getting people involved in precinct strategy. General Flynn is going to try to get on. He's been involved in the government, and he's either going to do a little recording or he's going to try to come on. We're going to have Marcy Hoshika on, who is the best friend of Tina Peters, and she's going to tell you what the latest is. She speaks to her almost every day. We're going to have Marty Waldman on, who helps us with Tina Peters. We're going to have Sam Anthony on from yournews.com. We're going to have Joe Hop back on telling us what's going on. We're going to have Christina Reagan on, who's got a women's group who's going to help us. We're going to have Marley Hornick on. Marley Hornick has a lot of lawsuits on election integrity. And we're going to have Linda Sinkowitz on. So we're going to have a big group coming on, and we're trying to get uh, some of the other people on. At the last minute, we put them in there. But we usually get about 13 speakers that last from 2 o'clock Eastern time to 4:30. And we get a lot of comments on. We have 13 computers going, and we see all the big people that stream us, what the people are saying, and we answer them where we can. So we have a whole team of assistants working on that, so you could see that we get everything going on. So I know we're running out of time here, Ben. We've been on for almost close to an hour. So if you have any questions, I can repeat a few things so we can make sure. I think we need to really do this. We need to call the governor of Colorado at 303-866-2471, or you can email him at governorpolis@state.co.us. Any information you want, email me at stern1054@gmail.com. I also want to talk about a young lady who works with me. She has savedmyfreedom.us. I want everybody to go there. She's got a new health plan that she's doing for all the podcasters. But what she did was, what was important, she worked in Maricopa County, and what she did was she spent 2 years showing the fraud. Michelle Swinick, she started a precinct strategy Zoom with me, and then turned it over with Raj Diajami from Defend Florida, and because he was in Florida and was getting a little tougher to do it because she was spending a lot of time on that. And we would like everybody to send a nice letter to Tina Peters at Tina Peters 203-512. That's 203-512. That's her number, but it's like when she was in Germany, where they put it on your arm, at 1401 W. 17th Street, Pueblo, Colorado, 81003. So I always end up with action, 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 and give you a chance to ask a couple of questions that I miss. So we have big dates: May the 14th, our election security call; June the 14th, our Flag Day call. If anybody did you want to get on our Flag Day call, also please help us and go to www.theflagshirt.com. We have Memorial Day coming up, 4th of July, Flag Day, many holidays, and this is our biggest time of the year. So please go there and help us get the shirts out. It's more important for you to wear the shirts, because if you go to a Trump rally, you're going to see all our shirts. And when you see our election 30, we have a lot of people wearing them. So thank you so much for letting me come on and tell everybody all this information. And I'm sure I missed a few things, but we usually get most of it in. And you have a great audience. I know you have a lot of people that love our country and want to get involved. So please do get involved. Give us an hour a day. Give us 2 hours a week, whatever you can afford. Because if we get 1 million people that give an hour a week, that's an hour, 1 million hours, and a lot can be done. So thank you again. Appreciate it. Any last minute questions?
Do have one about Tina Peters. Are there any restrictions on what she can be sent?
Well, We don't know if they'll allow stuff other than letters to come in. We haven't found that out yet. A couple of people are sending her books, they're sending her cookies, but I would think that they don't, give that. They are really miserable there. They are treating her like a communist spy. She is a wonderful woman. She had her own podcast. She went on many shows. She helped this country. President Trump wouldn't be involved. Wayne Root wouldn't be involved. General Flynn wouldn't be involved. Mike Lindell wouldn't be involved, on and on and on. They're all trying to help. I mean, this woman needs encouragement. We need to send letters because I think she's one of the best patriots in the world. And, I wouldn't be doing this, spending all this time. They didn't think she got a raw deal, and President Trump feels the same way. All our people do that. So I would maybe wait till I let you know what they could send because we don't know. But I would definitely send a letter, send a card, good wishes card. It's just that when somebody gets mail and they're in jail, it gives them something to do because we were worried at first, but she okayed it that she would be getting all these letters and the other inmates would be jealous of her. But maybe it'll make her important. Maybe the governor of Colorado will open his eyes because he's going to be running for president. And this bad vibes that are coming up against him can't help. You know what I'm saying? So please, just do me that one favor. If you can do me one favor, just please send a nice letter to Tina, thanking her for everything she did and being our voice of the Patriots.
Well, my audience knows that I'm really big on calls to action, so you've given us quite a few today, and I really appreciate that. And of course, the letters to Tita Peters. We listened to the 24th of April election integrity call last Saturday, so this is still going to be very fresh. Um, for our audience. And so a lot of this has come back up again, and Tina Peters and calling the governor. That's all really important. So we thank you so much for the information on Tina Peters. One of our audience is the one who asked me to get with you because she wanted to send some encouragement. And so I think that can on our channel can like start a nice little project. If
Well,
nothing else, right?
I would like to have you have that person, if she can, call me because I'd like to thank her because she was the one that actually got her to be able to send it to Tina. So I'd definitely like to call and thank her for doing this, and maybe she could come on our Zoom and talk one time too, because we need people from the audience to speak up also. We'd like everybody's voice to be heard because the more voices that are heard, the further we're going to go.
Right, right. So I will do that. I will have her give you a call. Before I let you go, though, if I could just say a little prayer over you, would you mind?
100%.
Dear Lord, we come to you with grateful hearts for patriots such as Steve Stern. We thank you for giving them courage to step out with truth and the tenacity to continue the fight, even when the going gets tough. We humbly ask that you continue to bless Steve with a sound mind and body and the wisdom and knowledge to continue moving forward in the battle against evil. We ask that the information he shared with us today reaches those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, and that it stirs their hearts, hands, and feet to action in the most positive and productive ways. We pray all of these things in the powerful name of our King, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. Thank you so much again for being with us today. Salute to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Blessings.
And tell all your people out there to have a lovely Mother's Day.
I will do that. Blessings.